Hello, everybody, and welcome to our panel for Pod vComm. We are thrilled to be part of this event, and we hope that we will be able to entertain you here for the next hour or so. I am joined by my two partners on the team, Jay Levesque and Charlie Williams. Guys, how are you doing?
Doing good, Jim.
Good.
To see you this morning.
We are primarily a podcasting channel, but we also do a whole lot more. We do a film production. We do event coverage. We try to do all kinds of entertaining things for you guys on a regular basis. And we hope that we entertain you on a regular basis. But I think that this video right here will be the key to telling you exactly what it is that we do.
For longer than many of my clients have been alive.
Jeff? Who's there? This isn't funny. I'm gonna call the cops. Is this some kind of joke?
Let's execute him!
And that hopefully carried over in why people were.
So that just kind of gives you a little insight as to what the Horrific Network is, man. We try to encompass, I think, everything that we think that not only like the horror community, but like pop culture in itself enjoys talking about. And part of what we enjoy doing a lot of is interacting with fans and getting to know exactly where the pulse of the thing as far as pop culture is at the time. And right now, 2020 definitely presented a interesting environment for pop culture and film industry. Podcasting, I would say, is the one thing that really benefited from 2020 because it allowed people to connect on this virtual platform, which is why we're stoked to be part of this Pod vComm spring break celebration for all things podcasting. And right now, we are in the middle of a film production. We're happy to be back behind cameras and be back behind on set and being able to interact with a lot of actors. And a lot of those actors come from Jay and his theater background and the connections that he has been able to create. But the premise of this film that we're working on was really centered around a podcast, which was why I was excited to be able to come on and talk about it here today for really the first time on a larger platform, and the platform being a podcasting convention virtually here today. And the show that we kind of centered our film around, Campfire Chronicles, very much like an homage to those classic shows that I grew up with when I was in elementary school, like Are You Afraid of the Dark? Or even Charlie used to read us, long story short, Charlie and I's relationship started back when he was my teacher, and he used to read us a series of stories that I'm sure you guys who are watching this are very, very familiar with, Goosebumps. And the premise of friends getting together to tell stories to scare each other is something that I think everybody can enjoy. And so the premise of this film is just that. The original show was based upon people listening to our show and then voting like a bracket style. And the bracket would be like Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark and yada yada. So you would have like Zebo the Clown versus the Haunted Mask episode and stuff like that. And people would vote. And that kind of evolved into what we do now. And that's more about debating whether or not they'd be good haunted houses. And the film kind of gets back to the root of us talking about scary stories and group of friends telling each other, and then it fades away like those anthology films that were really popular back in the day, like the Twilight Zone movie or Tales from the Crypt movie, or I mean,
Creep Show.
Even like Creep Show, or even Tales from the Hood. But we have a really cool cast of characters for the first film, and the feature film is going to be 3 kind of shorter films within a bigger picture. And the first film I can show you guys for the first time today of our poster for the first film, which is actually a Christmas horror movie. So there's the little teaser poster for it. So I won't be home for the holidays, and production went really well. One of the pictures on there is this right here, which my wife was actually behind the camera when we shot this because spoilers, am the dead guy on the ground there. But just that, the imagery of that shot, I'm really excited about how stuff looks. But this film, like I mentioned at the top, Jay has a theater background, and you found us some really cool cast members for this one. So what do you think that each of them kind of brought, Jay, to the whole horror element?
That's so they're all fans of horror from different degrees. All 3 of these actors I have watched or talked about horror with backstage while doing other shows with them. And when you sent me the script and said what you were looking for, it was very much right away in my mind. I'm going, I know exactly who these people are and who you want. And you started telling me the concept of like the Are You Afraid of the Dark, the Creep Show, I'm like that. I'm all about that. Let's do this. I've got a group of actors. If you let's start out with these. So there was the brother and sister duo that you needed, which are Aaron Miller and Mae Mercury. And the 2 of them have this chemistry together that you believe are bickering siblings. And you've directed them so well in their scenes that they're just having a blast and a half. And it's so funny when you see actors in horror movies talking about how, I get to film this, I get to die. Or oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to get stabbed today.
Yeah.
Or did you see how creepy that room is? And they're excited about these things that quote unquote normal people would be like deathly afraid of acting out the idea of being stabbed to death. But the actors that I brought are all people that are very willing and able to jump in and do whatever you want. And so when you started describing different death scenes and things to them, they were texting me giddy with how excited they were that, today's the day I get to die. Wait, if I die today, does that mean Jimmy doesn't want me on set for the next couple of days? Because I want to be there anyway, just in case we need to do a flashback or something. So, it's this energy of stage actors getting to do a genre that they're already familiar with and that they already enjoy, and getting it to be directed by somebody who has such a love for the genre. And the way that I've seen you set up shots and things, it's very much what you've seen from anything you've already enjoyed. And it's not that you're copying, it's not that you're directly referencing, it is that you are homaging with the way that you decide to set up this shot. And the actors are so appreciative, because if it's something that they've recognized, they get even more giddy because of the fact that they're excited they get to be in a shot just like that one that they loved. So it's this energy level that they are enjoying so much.
Yeah, it's funny because last night, like, we're in the middle of filming this thing right now. We're actually, wrapping the Christmas part of the story today, and then we will go into pre-production for the next story, which is centered around a guy who's kind of just down on his luck. Where I think a lot of the short stories that I'm doing for this feature film are centered around the toll that 2020 took on everyone. And so the twist, talking more about the Christmas one, is that these people are gathered in this house that's in the in the boons. You can't just like go call the police and have them come help you. And they're gathering there because they don't want to get in trouble for gathering and seeing each other over Christmas during the pandemic. They're worried that they're going to get, cited, or some kind of repercussion is going to, become them for taking this chance and having a gathering of over 6 people. The second story is about a guy who's down on his luck, but he's kind of like an adventurer, like a low-key Uncharted type character, where he's trying to make a fortune by what's the right way of putting it? Like certain circumstances or unfavorable circumstances, or like some kind of a circumstance like the akin of winning the lottery, I guess would be the best. And he's gotten wind that there's like this lost totem on this trail that people have tried to find for years upon years, and he thinks that he found it, and what he actually finds may have more of a sinister twist than that. But the
monkey's paw.
Monkey's paw.
Yeah, it's kind of like an homage to the monkey's paw, but this thing is not going to grant him wishes. My guy, who's kind of very much like our creature maker, or a guy who is always behind the scenes whenever we have like a cool looking monster, which the Christmas one definitely has a cool looking monster. In a sense, he and I were talking last night about what we're going to do to do what happens in the next round. But so this thing does not grant wishes, but it does definitely make its presence known in a horror fashion. And the Christmas one, though, Charlie, who was my main antagonist, fast forward 20 some odd years from when he was reading me Goosebumps. Charlie is always, we always say he's my Angus Scrim a la Phantasm. Like, I always got to have a part for Charlie in whatever I do. And Charlie starts off the Christmas version very much like the guy in the rocking chair in the sweater, like, oh, let me tell you a tale. And I knew the way Charlie pronounces his dialect can be very foreboding, but also very welcoming at the same time. So that scene in particular was a lot.
He remembers that. You remember that from 5th grade, Jim.
I do. I do. We actually have Drew coming on. Drew's actually in the Christmas film. He's one of our guys saying hello. Christian saying hello to us as well. Christian, how you doing, man? We hope you appreciate it.
Hey, Drew.
Hey, Drew. Christian.
but we, do a whole lot more than film production. We got our start doing podcasting, and one thing, obviously we are very happy to be here at vComm, but one thing that we have coming up ourselves is a virtual convention, which again is kind of a reflection of the times, and it's definitely starting to pick back up as far as in-person gatherings and social events, and the vaccine is becoming readily available, which is awesome as far as making people feel comfortable about going out again.
Right.
But we have a really cool event coming up at the end of May, celebrating the fact that, hey, we've made it to halfway to Halloween.
Woo!
And so May 21st through the 23rd, we will be live on our channels, and we will have all kinds of different events. We have a lot of haunt, Halloween, and horror podcasts coming on board, very much in the vein of what vComm has created for themselves with these series of events that they have put together. And one of the things, though, is something that is really cool that Jay is doing, and which will be featured, and that is like a live radio style drama that we will air, that he is compiling. And it's going to air live, but he's very much editing the thing, so it's like tip top shape. But a audio performance of the Night of the Living Dead, and that I think is going to be wild. So tell me, man, like, what was it about Night of the Living Dead that made you choose that film for you to go down this avenue with?
I am always looking for ways to combine my loves. And when I love something, or I love a group of people, I want to introduce them to another group of people. So like with your film project, Jimmy, when you wanted people, I'm like, I'd love to introduce my group of actors to this group of filmmakers, so that way we can combine these worlds. My favorite horror movie of all time has always been Night of the Living Dead. In doing work on this, it dawned on me that Night of the Living Dead, as we all know, is very much the birth of the modern zombie. Before that, zombie films were voodoo zombies, white zombie, things like that. So I love those zombies too, don't get me wrong, but the way George A. Romero and John Russo defined zombies as a pop culture phenomenon that it still lasts to this day, intrigued the hell out of me, and I always loved it when I was a kid. And it's still the horror movie that no matter how many times I've seen it, I still get scared at the same exact parts that I did when I was little.
Right.
So another thing that I grew up doing, because I grew up on a farm that we lost electricity all the time, had a battery operated tape deck, because I'm old. And we would put we would go to Costco, and anytime that we had to get our group of groceries and everything, I would beg my mom for old time radio program cassettes, because they used to sell box sets of old time radio programs. So, this week it's comedy. Okay, it's 6 cassettes of all W.C. Fields and Jack Benny and the Snow White and the Seven Gangsters and stuff like that. The Bickersons. And then I was already an emerging horror fan. So when I found like The Shadow and the Vault Tales and things like that from old time radio programs, I fell in love with the fact that you could try and scare people without visually scaring them.
Yeah.
And so when you started talking about wanting to do this halfway to Halloween, which, by the way, when you originally talked about it, you're like, yeah, I think we can get enough guests for one day, and we'll do a nice little one-day event.
Yeah,
and
a 3-day
so many people were wanting to be involved. It spread into 3, and you were like, maybe we should make it a week-long thing. And I was like, yes, however many people want to do it. Yes, The Shadow knows, Drew.
Yeah.
So I was very much wanting to find something that my theater company could do to help promote this, to be a part of it, to combine those worlds like I talked about. And I had just watched Night of the Living Dead again right before you announced this halfway to Halloween. And I'm like, I've been toying with the idea during this whole podcast, during this whole pandemic time, of wanting to do old time radio programs, but
Right.
trying to find my own spin on it and figure out how to do it. And this just became this prime opportunity to test out this format for me. And what better way to do it than a movie that I know backwards, forwards, and inside out because of how many times I've seen this. So I've got an amazing group of actors, some of which appear in I Won't Be Home for the Holidays. Other ones hopefully will appear in person in various other future film projects. And this group of people are so excited that I get text messages daily. When are you finished adapting the script? But I'm a perfectionist, and I'm trying to get everything I want out of this in a nice little tight radio show with full Foley, where you're going to hear the storm rolling in, and you're going to get the sound of the car pulling up and stuff like it. I want it to feel as if you were transported to the old time radio program.
Well, speaking of exactly that, Charlie is a published author of a few horror short stories, very creepy stuff. And you have gotten to have your stories as part of what is one of the top horror podcasts of all time, the No Sleep podcast. And they do exactly what Jay is talking about as far as taking a work and adopting it into a audio drama style format for people to enjoy. So I know, when I write a horror script, I write it in a sense that I can not only see the characters in my mind, which is an important thing, but I also write the script within my limits. Like, I'm not going to write a script that has some kind of Michael Bay $300 million explosion attached to it, because I know that is not feasible for the budget that I have to work with currently. Charlie, when you are writing these stories and now you have this like relationship with the No Sleep guys, are you writing at all with the thought that you are going to see this adopted into a radio drama? Do you like to just write your stories as they come to you, and whatever happens, happens?
That's a great question, Jim. Because I know that some authors write on spec, where they see that there's, a certain source, whether it be magazine or, something, a webzine or something like the No Sleep podcast is looking for a particular kind of story. And so they try to write to that. I always start with the idea. And I think for me, the most important thing is the idea, and see how the idea works out and develops. And I really don't look for a market for my stories until I'm completely done with them. And that's what happened with both of the No Sleep stories. I got to tell you a funny story about the No Sleep. I submitted a long story that was like almost 8,000 words to the No Sleep podcast. And I emailed the attachment. It was sent by email. And I realized shortly after sending it that I had sent the wrong story. I had sent the wrong file. So I thought, oh, what an idiot. Let me go ahead. And I hurriedly wrote an email out and apologized and said, look, I sent you the wrong story. This is the story I meant to send you. I'm so sorry. Hope that you'll consider this one for your podcast.
Right.
Well, almost immediately, fortunately, and I don't know why, the person who produces the podcasts, or the editor, or whatever you want to call her, she happened to be right. She happened to receive the email immediately, and she got back to me within like a few minutes and said, you know, you did in fact send me the wrong story, and I loved it, and I want to use it. And I thought, okay, well, that's great. And she goes, and, you know, I like what I see on the other one too. So,
Wow.
so we're going to consider that one too, but that was a longer process, but she accepted the one that I had sent by mistake immediately. So that was just a happy accident. And I've talked to other published authors about that, and they think, God, why can't that happen to me?
Yeah.
I got that
Yeah.
quote.
Can I ask both of you a question? Because
Yeah.
all three of us here write for completely different mediums.
Right.
Jimmy is very much a film writer. I'm very much a stage writer. And Charlie, you write for printed and now
Right.
for read out work. So like what you were saying, there's a lot of people write on spec. It's a question that I hear to creative people all the time, and we all despise it, but we all have our own unique answers to it, I feel. So where do your ideas come from? Where in the cosmos when you get your first idea for something, Jimmy, for this film that we're working on here, Charlie, for your last thing that showed up on the podcast, where do you get that initial idea? What's the spark that gets you going to start writing these things?
It sounds really cliche for me, but it's very much just reflective. When I wrote my first film, which you can go YouTube/Horrific Network and just go down to one of the first videos that we ever published, when I built that channel originally, long before we started doing celebrity interviews, whether in person or now via platforms like StreamYard. One of the first things that I did upon launching our podcast channel was I wrote a screenplay called Door to Door, and it was about a doorman, like 1950s Dick Van Dyke style. How you doing, ma'am? Type image that I had in my mind that I wanted this guy to play. And his coolness as far as the turn where he could be like this friendly guy, but at the end of the day, he definitely had sinister undertones, was centered around the antagonist for Poltergeist 2, that reverend. You're all going to die. Like that guy. That guy, in my opinion, and his name is escaping me right now, and I'm sorry, but he and was far scarier to me as a kid than anything in Poltergeist 1. And so I was like, I want that kind of a aesthetic to him, but what is he doing? And so I said, he's going, in my mind, the time in my life was very much a transitional time, and a reflective time as to why I was in the spot that I was in and how I could be a better person overall. And I was reflecting, and I'm like, how myself am I guilty of each of the 7 deadly sins? What have I done to get to where I am, and what am I going to do to dig myself out of it? And so really, like, writing, and again, same kind of thing, it's very much an anthology film feature, but I wrote these 7 characters, each all had a very distinctive trait that you can determine that why, what sin is them. Raph, is a guy who is verbally and physically abusing his wife. And Gluttony is this girl who, poor Ashton, she was a great sport. But she, she's catfishing people online with fake profile pictures. And she herself, at the time, was, she knew the body type that she was, and she knew why the part was good for her. And she played it really well. She was really hysterical in what she did to bring a little bit of humor to the horror element. But each of these people, Envy was centered around a character who was pissed that the family business got left to her younger sister instead of her. And so Charlie comes in and he approaches these people and he offers them a pill, like a Valium, and it's going to be the cure all to whatever ails them. And then when they take it, they come face to face with a demon representation of said sin. So like Envy, instead of like a Mouseketeer Disneyland, he had the ears, but then it came down to this cow that was like this rat face. And like Gluttony was the sous chef, but he was all frostbitten and like frozen looking. And so with that, I put together these stories, and I homage, like you said, that I try to do very much when they were with the demons. I wanted to kind of pay homage to like the classic Freddy Krueger scenes as far as the lighting and the atmospheres and everything else. And that's a really long-winded answer to your question, but I would say that
it's definitely the answer, though. It's
a nice plug for door to door, Jim.
No, yeah,
yeah.
Door to door.
But that has stayed with me as far as where I draw from first. It's always reflective first. So like this Christmas short, that's part of the bigger picture. I wrote that in January, coming off of the fact that I really wish that everyone could have had the Christmas we were all hoping for. And so that's what drives, those characters as far as why they're at that house. What
a sweet Christmas thought to think that everybody's going to be massacred at the Christmas.
Yeah, right. I'm sure there's some people out there that they would say that they wish that would happen at some.
What a warm and fuzzy. It's a warm and fuzzy, Jim.
Well, you haven't met my family, so.
Charlie, what about you? Where do you pull from?
I love the question because I think for me it comes from a variety of sources. I agree 100% with Jim that a lot of it is reflective, and I think most authors do draw, of course, from past experiences to create characters and to create situations. For me, a large part of it is reflective. I've set a lot of my stories. In fact, the two that are on the No Sleep podcast are both set in a fictional Central California town called Murphy's Landing.
Oh, okay.
Which is really the name of Salida. Salida's original name was Murphy's Landing, and I grew up in Salida. So I grew up in the country outside Salida. So for me, Murphy's Landing is my very own Castle Rock. I to not be too presumptuous that put myself on the level of Stephen King, but you know what I'm saying. It's reflective of where I grew up, and it's the background I'm familiar with. As far as some of the other ideas, I could pick them up from a newspaper article. I could pick them up from something I saw on television. I could pick them up from much like a musician who picks up inspiration from other musicians. I can pick up inspiration from a story from either other authors without plagiarizing, or from something I've seen in a film where it captured some spirit or some theme that was interesting to me, and I thought I could build a story around. So a lot of different sources then. But again, like Jimmy said, I think for most writers, you write what you know, and you write about the people that you know, you write about, they come into your stories whether you think they do or not. You write about the settings you know, you write about the situations you know. I think even if you were writing a science fiction story and you're writing about something that happened in space, there would be something that you drew on from your experience with that type of character or person, who might be a member of the the cast of characters.
Mm-hmm.
So in answer, a lot of different sources, and that's great because that germ of an idea then kind of takes root and it kind of starts to grow by itself. And pretty soon you're ready to sit down and you're ready to get started planning and writing. So,
What about with you, Jay? Because coming from a theater background before I got into film, that was one of the things when you're reading a screenplay, knowing that this is going to be performed in front of people, it is different. It is a
for sure.
situation that you have to kind of write around that it being live. So what about that for you as a writer did you bring to the table?
Well, thankfully, my wife and I running our own theater group, Ultra Suede Productions, we when I do sit down to write anything, I know the space that it's going to be in. I know exactly the people that I would like to use for this. And it doesn't always work out when I'm writing characters. Sometimes the actor isn't available when I get down to the finished product. But for me, all my scripts start off very much with a question and an answer. Now, in the process, the answer may change. But as long as I keep a clear goal of what my question that my show is asking, with live stage theater, the best plays I've ever seen or read have all been at the end of the day leaves me as an audience member wanting to ask or answer the question of the piece. So I always look at that and then use the reflective, like you guys were both saying, to help round out my characters to make them three-dimensional. So I have an idea of this question, and these people are who are going to have to ask it, but now they're just two-dimensional beings. So to bump them up, I use the type of person that I'm asking this part of the question with reminds me of all these characters I've seen in these movies and these TV shows and my friends as well. So that makes it well-rounded. And then I do the same with the other. And then I start building from there. And it's one of those moments where a script writing teacher I dealt with a long time ago said that every line, every word your characters say should lead back to that question. They should find a way to where it's not just conversation for conversation point. It should be that it goes about answering the question either subconsciously by just telling you more about the character, which will let you know about more why they're asking the question, or it's in their attempt to answering the question is how you'll get to know them. So I always start with that. The latest show that I just did, A Day at the Beach, that Jimmy, you saw on YouTube, it's coming to another fringe here soon, virtually. That question was, in the world that we're living in right now, how do we mourn the loss of a world while we're living in it, watching it die?
Yeah.
And so it became more about the 5 stages of grief that these characters went through and all of that. So it ends up going around that way where it's like I need to try to keep going back to that. And the best way to do it, exactly like what both of you guys said, is use your already placed in knowledge and build around that. You're not stealing, like you said, Charlie. You're not necessarily always homaging, like we said, Jimmy. It's very much we already know what we've enjoyed. So we're going to, if we're making a stew, we're going to sprinkle that recipe with some of our favorite spices. So for your visual art form, Jimmy, for your literary art form, Charlie, you sprinkle in the devices you know. Your Murphy's Landing became your Castle Rock. There's no problem comparing yourself to that because plenty of other authors have picked their own fictional town and center around it because that's their grounding point. People did it long before Stephen King. We just know Castle Rock because of Stephen King. The
True.
shots that you got, like the one you showed earlier of the knife in frame, you could pull that same shot and find it in how many other movies, all done differently, but all conveying the same feeling.
Right.
So you know what works for the audience. So you sprinkle in that reflection every time, because that's what we know. We grew up, all of us grew up in different areas of pop culture. So we're going to stand on the shoulders of different giants, and it's what we can put together in our own way, in our own voices. And both of you have consistently shown that you have your own voice in how you want to present your material. Neither one of you copy anybody. There's no point in time that anybody's going to look at either one of your gentlemen's work and say, oh, Jimmy's just trying to be Wes Craven. Charlie's just trying to be Stephen King. No, it is very much, you can see the influence of those people, but it doesn't mean that you're, and the greatest artists very much recognize that influence and talk about that influence. They don't hide away from, I read this type of thing. They admit, no, I'm a Stephen King fan, so I'm going to, something might seem Stephen King-ish when I write it because I'm that fan. Right. And I think that goes to anybody who's listening today, that especially if this quarantine's taught us anything, that art and creativity is the one thing that's going to survive, whether you let us get to do it in person or whether we have to do it in our own homes. So if you've been spending this whole year going, I wish I could do something, why aren't you doing it? If you already enjoy these things, why not just do it? And you have the technology at your hands to do it. So just move forward and hopefully
do it.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Just do it, man.
Good advice.
The first time you wrote that you were going to have work performed on other podcasts?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jay. That was directed to me. I thought you were talking to Jim. What was it again?
Charlie, did you have any idea when you started writing that other people were going to get to hear it through a podcast audio drama format? You did it right for that.
No, I did it strictly for print medium, and I had no idea. I just looked through markets. You look for places to sell your work. Yeah. And one of them was the No Sleep podcast, and they were not looking for scripts. They were actually looking for stories. So I thought, well, I'll just try it. Now, let me tell you, it was a great feeling to hear those stories dramatized with professional actors and sound effects. And, that was a trip, but that was an extra bonus because I wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah, I think that goes for anybody who sees some success. Like, you didn't write A Day at the Beach with the expectation that people are just going to fall in love with the story, and now it's an award-winning production.
Yeah,
I didn't make Door to Door with any expectation at all, and people, it won awards in Italy, for God's sakes. Like the fact that they watched our movie on a shoestring budget in a foreign country, like, that's enough. Like, that'll do. Like,
yeah, that's a success. Yes, absolutely. To get your stuff seen.
I don't know about all of you, but it's definitely one of these moments of when you get to see the finished product like that. That's gotta feel. It's amazing. I do not have kids. I will not end up having kids, but my work hopefully will live on long past I'm no longer with us. Yeah. And I feel a lot of writers are very much seeking immortality to a degree. I don't think that we are expecting anyone to necessarily remember who we are. But if they can remember the way we made them feel with our work, then that means a part of us continues to live on forever.
Exactly.
As long as that feeling can remain, that question can be answered, that message can be sent. It's a way to entertain people for decades and millennia to come, because this world could crumble. Somebody could run into your written work still, Charlie. Everything can get shut down and films can no longer be made. Door to Door was already made. So it's already out there. So no matter what the end result, none of us expect the end result. We just want our art to be our art. And so the end result being a positive one, and I'm sure both of you have just as many stories as I do as far as how many times you thought something was going to get there and it just disappeared into the ethos, and that story just died for some reason.
Hey man,
Absolutely.
I don't want to cut you guys off anymore. This has been a really dope conversation, but we got to get out of here. We thank you, Pod vComm, for having us. Look for this logo on Facebook, social media, however you are looking for us. The Horrific Network, man. We do weekly podcasting. We do all kinds of fun stuff. And we hope that we see you guys over there, and we continue to entertain. So thank you. Have a good rest of the weekend, and thank Pod vComm for having us on board for this event. We hope that we can come back and do another one of these. This was fun.